You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
What is up, guys? It's Braden here from Dragon King Sports, and today we are investigating whether or not one hit in the 2015 wildcard round completely changed Antonio Brown's personality. So stay tuned. You're in for a wild one. Also, one quick thing too, in my last video, a lot of people pointed out I said Staten Island wrong. I was pronouncing it wrong. My bad, guys. I'm a little bit retarded. But, yeah. Obviously not perfect, but I kind of enjoyed the roast. I don't mind a little good-natured ribbing, so that was kind of funny to read all the roasts. But yeah, I am a little retarded sometimes, but it is Staten Island. I apologize for that. I hope it didn't ruin your video watching experience. I hope I still did at least a decent job on the Polo Grounds video, but yeah, Staten Island. Head trauma as it relates to contact sports is something we are still learning about, with studies and research being done about it constantly. It has been observed to change people's personalities and temperaments too. But it is not limited to just contact sports. Take for instance the case of Phineas Gage, a railroad worker in the 1800s who had a rod go through his brain. He went from being hardworking, responsible, and friendly to aggressive, hostile, and impulsive. His friends described him as, quote, no longer Gage. In other words, his personality changed so completely that he was unrecognizable, although his memory and intelligence seemed to be more or less the same. And much like Gage, a case can be made that Antonio Brown underwent a similar transformation. Antonio Tavares Brown was born July 10, 1988 in Miami, Florida. He is the son of Touchdown Eddie Brown, a star in the Arena Football League in the 90s and early 2000s. Despite being an extremely talented athlete, grades and poor performance in school caused problems when trying to apply for college. Florida State would deny him admission, and after having an issue with his transcripts, he was also denied admission to Alcorn State as well. He eventually went with North Carolina Tech Prep and was inserted into the lineup at quarterback. In the 5 games he played in, he passed for over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns while rushing for 451 yards and 13 touchdowns. Having 13 rushing touchdowns in 5 games is just insane. Antonio Brown would reach out to Butch Jones, a staff member on West Virginia's football team who had attempted to recruit him in high school. After Jones was named head coach at Central Michigan, Brown decided he would walk on for the Chippewas. He made his Central Michigan debut on September 1st, 2007, having 4 receptions for 23 yards and a 52-7 loss to Kansas. He had his first 100-yard receiving game for CMU the following week against Toledo, recording 9 receptions for 105 yards and a 52-31 victory. The Chippewas would go 8-5 that season and won the Mid-American Conference. In the 2007 Music City Bowl against Purdue, Brown had 4 receptions for 94 yards and a 51-48 loss. On the season, he had over 1,000 yards, finishing with 1,003. Brown started every game in his sophomore season in 2008, having a slight dip in production, recording only 998 yards, but his 410 punt return yards and 791 kick return yards led the Mid-American Conference. In 2009, in his final season at CMU, he had the most receiving yards in a season that he ever had before, recording 1,198. In his 3 seasons at CMU, he had a total of 3,199 yards, which ranked 4th all-time in school history, and 22 touchdowns, which ranked 3rd all-time in school history. Despite having a stellar college career, Brown was not highly sought after coming out of college, with most experts projecting him to be a 5th or 6th round pick. In the 2010 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted Brown with a pick that they had previously received from the Arizona Cardinals. He was drafted in the 6th round, 195th overall. He wore jersey number 27 in college. However, at that time, NFL rules stated that he could not wear 27 in the NFL. So instead, he chose to wear number 84 because, in his words, quote, 8 times 4 is 32, and 32 teams looked past me, even the Steelers. So every time I go out there, it's a little added motivation. On September 10th, 2010, Brown made his NFL debut against the Tennessee Titans, returning kickoffs and punts, and had an 89-yard touchdown return on a reverse on the opening kickoff. He mostly returned kicks and punts in the 2010 season, but he did line up at receiver occasionally. The Steelers made the Super Bowl that season, losing to the Green Bay Packers. In the Super Bowl, Brown returned 4 kickoffs and 4 punts. Heading into the 2011 season, Brown was named the 3rd wide receiver on the depth chart and had a breakout season, having 1,108 yards and 7 touchdowns. Brown would cement himself as one of the top receivers in the NFL over the next few seasons, having over 1,000 yards in 2013, 2014, and 2015, and having 28 touchdowns between 2011 and 2015. However, the 2015 playoffs are where everything would change for Antonio Brown, as the old Antonio would cease to exist, and a new, much darker Antonio would take his place. And just like Phineas Gage 2 centuries before, this Antonio was not Brown. Because in the wildcard round against the division rival Cincinnati Bengals, a hit would take place from notorious cheap shot artist Vontaze Burfict.
Roethlisberger from the pocket, middle of the field, incomplete. Personal foul. A flag does come in. Went to the head. Lewis Harris is going to be flagged for this on the hit on Antonio.
Lewis, before this drive started, was talking on the sideline the whole time, it seemed like, to Vontaze Burfict, and yes.
Oh my goodness.
As disturbing and scary as this looks, a few years would pass with not much of note happening. Antonio's entire personality might have changed, but the monster was not fully out of the cage just yet. He continued having stellar season after stellar season for the Steelers, proving to everyone that they were dumb to overlook him in the 2010 NFL Draft. In 2015, he had 1,834 yards and 10 touchdowns, which is one of the best receiving yards anyone has ever had in the entire history of the NFL. In 2016, he had 1,284 yards and 12 touchdowns, and in 2017, he had 1,533 yards and 9 touchdowns. In 2018, that trend would continue with him having 1,533 yards and 9 touchdowns that season. He was even the cover athlete for the Madden game released that year, but something peculiar happened heading into the last week of the regular season. He had been skipping practices, and when quarterback Ben Roethlisberger rightfully called him out on it, an argument ensued. During this heated exchange, other teammates became involved, and Brown hurled a football at one of them. Brown was told he would not play in Week 17. He then promptly ghosted everyone days before the game, showed up to watch, and then left at halftime. Brown had been given too many breaks already. The previous week against the Saints, he was still allowed to play despite missing a mandatory team meeting. The Steelers were beginning to get fed up with him, and the feeling was mutual. Brown, for whatever reason, despite being a locker room cancer and the source of all the problems, decided it wasn't him who was the problem, but rather the Steelers. And so he did what any gentleman would do. He demanded a trade. Although Roethlisberger tried to downplay the argument between the two, it was clear Antonio was upset and wanted no part of any reconciliation. You see, Brown did not just have a problem with Big Ben, but seemingly everyone, including head coach Mike Tomlin. He refused to answer anyone's calls or texts. The lack of communication was certainly frustrating, but what could they do besides give him his wish and trade him? On March 9, 2019, the Steelers traded Antonio Brown to the Oakland Raiders for a 3rd and 5th round pick in the 2019 NFL Draft. As a Raiders fan and a Steelers hater, I was stoked. It felt like we had finessed the Steelers and gotten one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but I was not aware of the absolute craziness that was to come. And not just with the Raiders, but just in general. I wasn't aware of how crazy Antonio Brown actually is. But when I heard the news about, the drama going down between Ben Roethlisberger, the Steelers, Antonio Brown, all that, I figured it was just drama. I didn't take it seriously. But little did I know what was in store. The first red flag was him arriving to training camp in a hot air balloon. Obviously, the guy is eccentric, but this is just narcissistic, attention-seeking behavior. He's clearly the type of person that has to have everyone's attention on him at all times. One thing I forgot to mention too is Brown almost ended up in Buffalo as a member of the Bills, but decided he didn't want to be traded to Buffalo, complained about it a ton on social media, primarily Twitter, and it eventually just caused such a headache for the Steelers that they decided to trade him to Oakland instead. At Antonio Brown's press conference where he was introduced as a member of the Raiders, he said, quote, "I'm here to elevate everything around me. I'm here to be a surge of energy, a positivity, and good force, a great teammate, and to bring out the best in everyone because we know it's not just about me," unquote. Yeah, dude, you wanted it to be about you when you showed up in a hot air balloon. Jeez. In August of 2019, Brown posted photos of his frostbitten feet, which I don't think I'm allowed to show on YouTube, but the pictures are pretty easy to find online if you want to. But the dumbass had forgotten to wear protective footwear in the cryotherapy chamber. This injury made it so he missed 10 out of 11 practices in training camp. Now let's talk about the helmet debacle. He started tripping out about his helmet. He filed a grievance on August 9th to continue wearing his old helmet, even though the NFL had banned it, threatened to retire from the NFL unless he was allowed to wear his old helmet. And this was a pattern of behavior you'll see a lot from Antonio Brown as we go along in this video. If he doesn't get his way, he throws a fit every single time. An arbitrator denied his request and he refused to practice with the Raiders. It was at this point I kind of had an inkling that we might have made a mistake in signing this guy. On September 4th, 2018, he finally gave in and decided to just pick a helmet from the list of approved ones, choosing the Zenith Shadow helmet. The same day, on September 4th, he was fined $54,000 for calling GM Mike Maycock a cracker. I'm sorry, that's just hilarious. During this altercation, Brown had to be physically restrained by several teammates, including none other than Vontaze Burfict, the man who many say started this whole mess. Allegedly, of course. On September 6th, he showed up to practice, apologizing to everyone. He asked if he could play in the Week 1 game against the Denver Broncos, and head coach John Gruden told him yes. However, the apology wasn't real. A day later, he demanded to be released. He was released just hours before the guaranteed money in his contract would actually take effect and become guaranteed. To add insult to injury, the Raiders fined Brown $215,000 right before they released him. On September 7th, 2019, the same day he was released from the Raiders, the Patriots signed him to a one-year contract worth up to $15 million and a $9 million signing bonus. The Patriots also added a second-year option that could have been worth up to $20 million. The next part of this story involves allegations of assault, so if you're sensitive to that sort of thing, feel free to skip past. Also, I have to use euphemisms because of YouTube's rules and terms, so I'm going to say grape in place of the R word, just so we're all clear on that. A woman named Brittany Taylor filed a suit that alleged Brown had graped her at a hotel in Miami the previous year in 2018. Usually when this sort of thing comes up, I tend to just kind of take the wait and see approach to see what evidence comes out. I don't necessarily take either side, and the reason for that is because we've seen so many false allegations. Trevor Bauer, Matt Ariza, Brian Banks, and that doesn't even scratch the surface. But when it comes to Antonio, well, I'm not going to say he did it, but if it turns out that he did, I wouldn't exactly be shocked, sadly. I can't exactly say what the suit alleges Brown did to her because of YouTube's TOS, but if you want to, you can look it up online and find it. It's not hard to find. But if it's true, it's absolutely disgusting and vile. Brown, of course, denied the allegations. He practiced with the Patriots in the midst of all this and debuted in Week 2 against the Miami Dolphins. He caught 4 passes for 56 yards and a touchdown in New England's 43-0 win in Antonio's hometown. It only took barely over a week for Antonio to wear out his welcome. He allegedly sent intimidating texts to Brittany Taylor, the woman accusing him of grape, and the Patriots, realizing the absolute horror crux they had invited in, released him on September 20th, 2019. On September 22nd, 2019, Brown posted to Twitter that he was retiring from the NFL. A few days later, his bipolar ass took it all back, saying he wasn't going to retire. On July 20th, 2020, he changed his mind again and said yes, he was retiring. Having more ups and downs than a roller coaster, most people tuned in just to see what crazy thing he would do next. And he definitely didn't disappoint either, trust me. By now, Antonio had multiple women alleging rape against him, and he was also sued by a Pittsburgh-based doctor for allegedly farting in his face, and also for not paying $11,000 in fees. In January of 2020, while helping to operate a youth football league in Hollywood, Florida, sponsored by the Hollywood Police Department, the HPD said they no longer wish to work with Brown, saying, quote, "We do not want him to continue to affect our youth or influence them in a negative way." Brown seemed to be on a speed run to see how many bridges he could burn and how fast. And even days later, he got in more trouble, attacking a moving truck driver at his home in Hollywood. He was charged with battery and burglary. He was certainly keeping his lawyers plenty busy, that's for sure. On June 12, 2020, Brown pleaded no contest to the felony battery and felony burglary charges, receiving 2 years probation and 100 hours of community service, a 13-week anger management therapy program, and a much-needed psychological evaluation. On October 27, 2020, Brown signed a 1-year contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The head coach, Bruce Arians, was previously the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh and so already had a working relationship with Brown. He debuted after an 8-game suspension on November 3rd, catching 3 passes for 31 yards in a 38-3 loss to the New Orleans Saints. A couple weeks later, on November 16th, Brown allegedly destroyed a security camera at his house and threw a damn bike at the security guard who worked for him. Brown caught his first touchdown as a Buck in Week 15 against the Atlanta Falcons in a 31-27 victory. He finished the 2020 season with 45 receptions for 483 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the wild card round, the Bucs faced the Washington football team, as they were known that year, and caught 2 passes for 49 yards and a touchdown, and rushed once for 22 yards in a 31-23 win. Brown got hurt in the divisional round against the Saints, suffering a knee injury. He didn't play in the NFC Championship against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. In the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, he had 5 receptions for 22 yards and a touchdown in the Buccaneers' 31-9 victory. Brown, despite his antics, stayed on the team long enough to be able to call himself a Super Bowl champion. On April 28, 2021, he agreed to another 1-year deal with the Buccaneers, and despite the surgery on his hurt knee, was able to pass a physical. Things remained pretty quiet for most of 2021 for him, at least for someone as insane and out of his mind as Brown. In December, he was suspended 3 games, and the violation was for misrepresenting his vaccine status, which, honestly, who cares? However, Week 17 of the 2021 season is where things would get crazy, and honestly, hilarious.
That Tom Brady has brought to this team.
Antonio Brown, that's Antonio Brown without his uniform, we are told, without his jersey, and running out of the field.
Yeah, guys, very odd situation. Antonio Brown boiled over, very upset on the sideline, took off his shoulder pads. Mike Evans, O.J. Howard trying to convince him to keep them on. Obviously, they were unable to do so. He tossed his shoulder pads, stripped off his shirt and glove, threw those into the crowd, then ran across the field while the teams were still on the field, giving the crowd a peace out sign. I'll let you know when we hear something official on his status.
We knew you couldn't behave yourself for long, Antonio. 3 days after this incident occurred, Brown released a statement alleging Arians and the Buccaneers organization had covered up a broken ankle and torn ligaments that Brown allegedly had. There's very little evidence of this injury even existing, but Brown said he would get surgery on it regardless. Arians, for his part, said Brown hadn't mentioned a broken ankle, nor had he complained about pain in the recent past before this happened. Arians said he was aware of a sprained ankle earlier in the season, but Brown had made significant progress in healing and was cleared to play. Arians said that this incident was a result of him telling Antonio Brown to enter the game, and when he refused, Arians told Brown to go to the locker room. In Brown's version of events, Arians screamed at him that if he doesn't go in the game, he'd be finished in Tampa, and then Arians dragged his finger across his throat. Brown was officially released on January 6th, 2022. On May 14th, 2022, Brown allegedly exposed himself to a woman in a pool in Dubai. I only say allegedly for legal reasons because there's actually a video of it. I watched the video and Antonio actually shoved his bare ass in her face twice. She was laughing and smiling the whole time, and take that how you want. He dunked her in the water a few times and she was still kind of laughing and smiling, but then she swam away. He then sat down in a shallow part of the pool and, how do I put this in YouTube-friendly terms, pulled out his sausage and began stroking. I probably shouldn't say that on YouTube, but yeah, it was a pretty wild video, I'll say that much. According to witnesses that spoke to the New York Post, the woman was very angry and complained about it. Obviously, this is gross to do in public even if it was consensual, but the fact that it's allegedly not consensual makes it way, way worse. On December 1st, 2022, police attempted to serve an arrest warrant on Brown related to a domestic violence incident that previously occurred between him and his ex-fiancée, in which he allegedly threw a shoe at her. He refused to come out of his house, however, barricading himself inside. The police eventually just left, which, when I first heard this, seems pretty strange that they would just, leave like that. Like, if they're there to arrest him, why would they just leave? But according to a legal expert interviewed by Fox 13 Tampa, it is not uncommon for police to leave to avoid escalating the conflict. On January 17, 2023, his Snapchat account was suspended because he posted pictures on his story of some chick blowing him. And just why, Antonio? Why, dude? On March 2nd, 2023, Brown joined the ownership group for the Albany Empire, a football team in the National Arena League that was coming off back-to-back championships. On April 14, 2023, an arrest warrant was issued for Brown for unpaid child support. The next day, on April 15th, Brown told reporters he was the sole owner of the Empire, but that was later proven to be false when one of the other owners, Mike Quarta, said that he only owned 47.5% of the team. However, Brown later bought Quarta's ownership stake, which increased his share of the team to 95%. On May 3rd, Brown would claim that he had no ownership in the team, saying that it was owned by a foreign national named Antonio L. Alla, and this was hilarious, honestly, that he was pretending to be a foreign national. He basically released a letter to the media claiming that, in fact, the foreign national in question was him, despite him being born in Miami and both of his parents being born in the United States as well. On June 3rd, 2023, Brown was booted out of a Holiday Inn Express hotel in Albany where the team was staying for blasting music and smoking weed. On June 15th, 2023, the National Arena League terminated the Albany Empire's membership for Brown's failure to pay league dues and costs. Every time they tried to collect, he refused to pay, leaving them no other choice. He took a team who won back-to-back championships and destroyed them. Don't let him anywhere near the Kansas City Chiefs. On August 22, 2023, an arrest warrant was issued for Brown once again for unpaid child support. Brown would later say there was no arrest warrant. I'm not exactly sure who he thought he was fooling. On August 29, 2023, Brown claimed that the reason he's batshit insane is due to his CTE, which is honestly probably right. He said, quote, "My CTE acting up. Fuck y'all whoever played on my name," unquote. The same day, Brown again denied that there was a warrant out for his arrest, despite there 1000% being a warrant out for his arrest. On October 15th, 2023, Brown was arrested for that very same warrant. In May of 2024, Brown began harassing Indiana Fever point guard Caitlin Clark on Twitter, implying that she is a man, saying that she keeps it hairy downstairs, if you catch my drift, and calling her cousin It, a reference to an Addams Family character. Brown loves to insult white people on Twitter, calling it his Cracker of the Day segment, which is honestly hilarious. I'm not gonna lie, I find that funny. Caitlin Clark ended up blocking him, joining Tom Brady and Joe Biden among others on the list of public figures that have blocked him. Clark said in a statement, quote, "I've had enough of this constant abuse from Antonio Brown. It's time to put an end to this behavior and take a stand against online harassment," unquote. Brown later gave a half-assed apology, but let's be honest, he wasn't really sorry. The same month, in May of 2024, Brown filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, owing almost $3 million to various creditors. Brown made $80 million in his NFL career, but when the bankruptcy was filed, it said his assets totaled less than $50,000. And that's where we stand at the time of this video's release. A man who, just like Phineas Gage, had one incident of head trauma that completely made his entire personality change for the worse. It's sad to see because this is a man who could have been one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play. At the height of his career, he was putting up numbers similar to the great Jerry Rice. But he self-sabotaged in the worst way, and even though I think he needs to be locked in a padded room and given heavy sedatives, I truly do hope he gets his act together. I think sadly though, we haven't seen the end of Antonio's antics. There's a lot of stuff in this video I didn't include because he's just done so much crazy stuff, but the major stuff was covered. And if you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe if you have not already, and comment for the algorithm. And I'll leave you off with one of my favorite Antonio Brown moments.
49 to play in this first half. They got pressure in. Lanning gets it off cleanly. Brown backpedals all the way to the 28-yard line. Good move upfield. Brown splits special teamers, and now Brown is off to the races. Hurdles, kicks a man, and a flag is thrown.
Yeah, Brown at the end of it makes the first guy miss here, then he's going to make 9 other guys miss here. Just flailing away at number 84, but I don't know why Brown thought he had to do that.